Ladies and gentlemen, life at its core is a symphony of paradoxes, isn't it? And one of the most perplexing paradoxes we encounter is the man who loves you deeply yet seems to ignore you profoundly. This contradiction is not merely an enigma of human relationships, it is a window into the intricate architecture of the human psyche. When a man loves, truly loves, he opens himself to a profound vulnerability. Love is not just an emotion, it is a revelation of the soul. To love someone is to expose your deepest self, to risk rejection, and to face the terrifying prospect of not being enough. This fear, this raw vulnerability, can sometimes manifest as avoidance. The very intensity of his love compels him to retreat because the stakes are unbearably high. Now, think about this: human beings are products of their pasts. A man who appears to ignore you might be carrying the invisible scars of unresolved pain, perhaps from childhood, perhaps from previous relationships. These experiences can shape how love is given or withheld. When love feels threatening or overwhelming, ignoring becomes a shield, a defense mechanism born out of self-preservation. But let's not forget that relationships exist within the framework of societal expectations. Men are often taught to be stoic, to suppress emotions, to be strong. Expressing love openly might feel like a breach of these ingrained norms, leading to emotional withdrawal, even when the heart is full of affection. The question then becomes, how do we navigate this? How do we reconcile love that feels like neglect? The answer lies in understanding and communication. Recognize that ignoring is not always a sign of apathy, it is often a signal of inner conflict. Open the door to dialogue, but do so with patience and compassion. And perhaps most importantly, look inward. Love is not merely about what you receive, it is about what you give and how you grow. A man who loves you but ignores you might be struggling with his own battles. The key is to approach this paradox with curiosity, not condemnation. Life, after all, is not about finding perfection, but about embracing imperfection with grace. Love is messy, love is complicated, and love is worth it. So if you find yourself entangled in this paradox, remember, understanding is the bridge between love and its expression. Human beings are profoundly complex creatures, shaped by biology, psychology, and social experiences. This complexity creates a dynamic where contradictory behaviors often coexist within the same individual. A person can love deeply and yet act in ways that seem entirely at odds with that love. This duality is not a sign of hypocrisy, but rather a reflection of the intricate interplay between our emotional needs, fears, and subconscious patterns. Love, in its purest form, is an overwhelming force. It demands vulnerability, courage, and an openness to connect with another person on a profound level. Yet, these very demands can trigger a counter-reaction: fear, hesitation, or withdrawal. For someone deeply in love, the stakes of failure or rejection are magnified. This fear of losing what they cherish most can lead to behaviors that seem paradoxical, like ignoring or distancing themselves. It's not that the love isn't genuine, rather, it's that the person is grappling with the emotional weight of that love. Human behavior is often driven by unconscious patterns developed over time. Past experiences, especially those from childhood, play a pivotal role in shaping how we relate to others. Someone who grew up in an environment where emotional expression was discouraged may struggle to reconcile their feelings of love with the vulnerability needed to express them. Ignoring or pulling away might be a learned response, a protective mechanism that shields them from potential hurt or rejection. This duality is also influenced by the tension between our innate desire for connection and our equally strong need for independence. While love draws us closer, it can also make us feel exposed, leading to a subconscious attempt to reassert autonomy by creating distance. In such moments, ignoring someone isn't necessarily a lack of care, but an effort to regain emotional equilibrium. Understanding this duality requires us to see beyond surface behaviors and consider the internal conflicts that drive them. People are not always aware of why they act the way they do, and their actions often stem from a combination of love, fear, and self-preservation. Recognizing this helps us approach such situations with empathy acknowledging the complexity of human emotions rather than reducing them to simple judgments. Fear of vulnerability is one of the most profound forces shaping human relationships. At its core, vulnerability means exposing our authentic selves, our thoughts, emotions, and imperfections to someone else. It is a courageous act that fosters intimacy and connection, but it also comes with the risk of rejection, judgment, or betrayal. This dual-edged nature of vulnerability often creates fear, especially in the context of love, where the stakes are emotionally highest. When a person deeply loves someone, they face the daunting prospect of having their innermost feelings reciprocated or not. This uncertainty can be terrifying. The closer we come to revealing the depths of our affection, the more we risk being hurt. This fear of potential emotional pain can lead people to retreat, avoid, or behave in ways that seem cold or distant. Paradoxically, the more they care, the more they might guard themselves against the very connection they desire. Fear of vulnerability is often rooted in past experiences. For some, it stems from childhood environments where expressing emotions was discouraged, ridiculed, or met with indifference. For others, it might be the result of previous relationships where trust was broken or love was unreciprocated. These experiences leave emotional scars that shape how a person navigates closeness, often creating a protective barrier to avoid repeating those painful moments. This fear also connects deeply with our need for control. To be vulnerable is to surrender control over how we are perceived or treated by others. It requires a willingness to step into the unknown, trusting that the other person will handle our openness with care. For many, especially those who value independence or have faced rejection in the past, this surrender feels like a risk too great to take. Cultural and societal expectations further complicate this dynamic. Many people, particularly men, are taught to equate vulnerability with weakness. They are encouraged to suppress their emotions, appear stoic, and maintain a facade of invulnerability. This conditioning creates an internal conflict. The natural human desire to connect clashes with the learned fear of appearing fragile or dependent. Overcoming fear of vulnerability requires self-awareness, trust, and courage. It demands an understanding that love and connection are inherently risky but also profoundly rewarding. Being vulnerable does not guarantee that we won't be hurt, but it is the only path to genuine intimacy and meaningful relationships. By embracing this truth and fostering environments of acceptance and understanding, we can begin to dismantle the barriers that fear of vulnerability creates, opening the door to deeper connections and richer emotional lives. Psychological projection is a defense mechanism in which individuals unconsciously attribute their own emotions, traits, or desires, often negative or uncomfortable, to someone else. It allows people to externalize feelings they find difficult to accept about themselves, effectively projecting them onto others as a way of managing internal conflict. This behavior is not necessarily intentional or malicious, but is often rooted in deep-seated psychological patterns developed over time. In the context of relationships, projection can have profound and often detrimental effects. A person who feels insecure, for instance, might project those insecurities onto their partner by accusing them of being overly critical or untrustworthy. Similarly, someone who struggles with their own emotional unavailability might claim that their partner is distant or detached. In doing so, they deflect attention from their own shortcomings, avoiding the discomfort of self-reflection while simultaneously creating tension in the relationship. Projection often stems from unresolved issues, particularly those rooted in early life experiences. For example, someone who grew up in a critical or neglectful environment might internalize feelings of inadequacy or fear of abandonment. These feelings, left unaddressed, can resurface in adulthood, influencing how they perceive and interact with others. Rather than acknowledging and confronting their own fears or inadequacies, they may project them outward, unconsciously expecting others to mirror their internal struggles. Another common aspect of projection is the attribution of suppressed desires or impulses. A person who harbors guilt or shame about certain thoughts or behaviors may see those same qualities in others, even when there is little evidence to support such beliefs. This form of projection helps them distance themselves from feelings they cannot comfortably reconcile. Projection can also serve as a way to preserve one's self-image. By attributing negative traits to someone else, a person can maintain a sense of moral or emotional superiority. For example, a partner who feels jealous but cannot admit it might accuse their significant other of being controlling or possessive, shifting the focus away from their own emotional struggles. The consequences of psychological projection in relationships can be significant. It often leads to misunderstandings, resentment, and a breakdown of trust, as the projected qualities are experienced as real by both parties. Over time, these dynamics can create a toxic cycle where unresolved issues are continuously deflected rather than addressed. Breaking free from the cycle of projection requires self-awareness and a willingness to examine one's own emotions and behaviors honestly. Recognizing when projection is occurring is the first step. This involves paying attention to patterns of blame, criticism, or distrust and questioning whether these perceptions might be influenced by internal conflicts. Therapy or counseling can be a valuable tool in this process, providing a safe space to explore and unpack unresolved emotions. Addressing projection involves fostering open and compassionate communication within relationships. When both individuals feel safe to express their true feelings and vulnerabilities without fear of judgment, the need for defense mechanisms like projection diminishes. By confronting and integrating their own emotional struggles, people can build healthier, more authentic connections with others, free from the distortions of unconscious projection. Overwhelming intensity in relationships refers to the heightened emotional experience that can arise when love, affection, or connection feels exceptionally deep and consuming. While this intensity can be exhilarating and affirming, it can also become daunting, creating internal conflicts that lead to unexpected or even contradictory behaviors. Understanding this phenomenon requires exploring how emotional intensity affects the mind, emotions, and behavior. When someone loves deeply, the experience can stir powerful emotions, joy, hope, passion, and a profound sense of connection. However, this depth of feeling can also trigger anxiety and fear. The stakes in an intense relationship often feel higher, the potential for loss or rejection looms larger. For many, the sheer importance of the relationship creates pressure, making every interaction or decision feel loaded with significance. This weight can overwhelm even the most secure individuals. Intensity often magnifies vulnerability. To truly connect with another person, we must expose our authentic selves, including our flaws, insecurities, and fears. This level of openness can feel like walking a tightrope without a safety net. The more intense the emotions, the greater the perceived risk of being hurt or misunderstood. As a result, some individuals may instinctively withdraw or create emotional distance as a way to regain a sense of control over their inner world. In addition to vulnerability, overwhelming intensity can bring about a sense of emotional overstimulation. Human beings have a natural threshold for processing emotions, and when feelings exceed that threshold, the experience can become mentally and physically exhausting. A person may need time and space to recalibrate, not because they don't care, but because the intensity has depleted their emotional reserves. Ignoring or pulling away in such moments is often a subconscious attempt to restore balance, not a reflection of diminished affection. Cultural and societal factors can further amplify the challenges of overwhelming intensity. Societal norms often dictate how people should express or manage strong emotions, particularly in romantic relationships. For example, men may feel pressure to appear composed and in control, suppressing their emotional responses to avoid seeming too emotional. Similarly, women may fear being labeled as clingy or overly sensitive if they express the depth of their feelings. These pressures can lead individuals to suppress or avoid confronting the intensity they feel, resulting in mixed signals or apparent detachment. Overwhelming intensity can disrupt an individual's sense of identity and autonomy. In deeply emotional relationships, it's easy to become so enmeshed with the other person that one's individuality feels at risk. This loss of personal boundaries can create discomfort, prompting a desire for space or independence as a way to reestablish equilibrium. Navigating overwhelming intensity requires self-awareness and communication. Recognizing the impact of such emotions on oneself and the relationship is a critical first step. It's important to acknowledge that intense feelings are not inherently bad. They are a testament to the depth of connection, but they must be managed constructively. Open communication about emotions, needs, and boundaries can help both individuals feel supported and understood, reducing the anxiety that often accompanies intense connections. Self-care is essential. Taking time to process emotions independently, reflect on personal needs, and maintain a sense of balance can prevent feelings of being overwhelmed. For relationships to thrive amidst intensity, both individuals must create space for themselves and each other, honoring the delicate balance between closeness and individuality. Overwhelming intensity is both a challenge and an opportunity. It reveals the depth of human connection and the capacity for profound love, while inviting individuals to grow in emotional maturity and resilience. By embracing and managing this intensity, relationships can become not only a source of joy, but also a catalyst for personal and relational growth. Unconscious patterns are deeply ingrained behaviors, thoughts, and emotional responses that operate below the level of conscious awareness, often guiding how we relate to others and navigate our relationships. These patterns are shaped by a combination of early life experiences, cultural influences, and personal history. While they serve as coping mechanisms or survival strategies in certain situations, they can also become obstacles to healthy relationships when left unexamined. From the moment we are born, our minds begin absorbing information about the world and our place in it. Early interactions with caregivers play a crucial role in forming the foundational patterns of how we relate to others. For example, a child who experiences consistent care and emotional attunement is more likely to develop a secure attachment style, fostering trust and openness in future relationships. Conversely, a child who grows up in an environment marked by neglect, criticism, or unpredictability may internalize patterns of fear, distrust, or self-doubt, which can unconsciously influence their interactions as adults. These early imprints often go unnoticed because they become part of our psychological autopilot. For instance, someone who experienced emotional neglect might unconsciously expect rejection in relationships, leading them to behave defensively or avoid intimacy altogether. They may not even realize they are acting out of fear, interpreting their behavior as natural or justified based on their immediate circumstances. Unconscious patterns can also manifest as repeated relational dynamics. Have you ever noticed someone repeatedly choosing partners with similar traits or encountering the same conflicts in different relationships? This repetition is often rooted in unresolved emotional needs or wounds. For example, an individual who grew up feeling unloved might unconsciously seek validation through relationships, gravitating toward partners who replicate the emotional dynamics of their upbringing. The hope, albeit unconscious, is to fix the past by rewriting the narrative with a different outcome. Cultural and societal influences also contribute to the formation of unconscious patterns. Messages about gender roles, relationships, and emotional expression are absorbed from family, media, and community, shaping how individuals perceive and behave in romantic and interpersonal connections. A person raised in a culture that values stoicism might unconsciously suppress emotions, viewing vulnerability as a weakness, even if this hinders their ability to connect deeply with others. These patterns can create blind spots, where individuals are unaware of how their past influences their present. For example, someone might blame a partner for being distant without realizing they themselves unconsciously push others away due to fear of abandonment. Similarly, someone who struggles with trust might micromanage or overly control their partner's behavior, inadvertently creating the very distance they fear. The key to breaking free from unconscious patterns is self-awareness. Identifying these patterns requires a willingness to reflect on past experiences and recognize recurring themes in one's relationships. Therapy or counseling can be instrumental in uncovering these hidden dynamics, providing a safe space to explore childhood experiences, emotional triggers, and relational habits. Once identified, these patterns can be consciously addressed. This involves not only recognizing their origins, but also actively choosing new ways of thinking and behaving. For instance, someone who unconsciously avoids intimacy might practice gradually opening up to others, challenging the fear that vulnerability will lead to rejection. Similarly, someone who seeks constant validation might focus on building self-worth independently of external affirmation. Breaking unconscious patterns is not an overnight process. It requires patience, effort, and self-compassion. It's about rewriting the scripts that have guided us for so long, replacing automatic reactions with intentional, thoughtful responses. In doing so, we free ourselves from the constraints of the past, allowing for healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the present. The need for self-validation arises from a fundamental human desire to feel valued, capable, and worthy. When this need is unmet internally, individuals often seek external sources such as relationships, accomplishments, or social approval to affirm their worth. While external validation can temporarily boost confidence, reliance on it creates a fragile sense of self, vulnerable to the opinions and actions of others. In relationships, the need for self-validation can manifest as dependency, excessive reassurance seeking, or a tendency to avoid conflict to gain approval. This dynamic often stems from unresolved insecurities or a lack of self-worth developed in early life experiences. For example, someone who grew up feeling unacknowledged may subconsciously rely on a partner's attention to fill that void. True self-validation requires cultivating internal confidence and self-acceptance. It involves recognizing one's inherent value, independent of external feedback, and affirming one's emotions, thoughts, and choices. This inner strength fosters healthier relationships where love and support enhance one's self-esteem rather than replace it. Communication breakdown is one of the most common and significant challenges in relationships, often leading to misunderstandings, frustration, and emotional distance. At its core, a communication breakdown occurs when the intended message is not effectively conveyed, received, or understood. This can stem from a variety of factors, including unspoken assumptions, emotional barriers, or differences in communication styles. One major cause of communication breakdown is assumptions and expectations. People often expect their partner to just know what they're thinking or feeling, especially in close relationships. When these unspoken needs go unmet, resentment can build, even though the partner may have been unaware of the expectations in the first place. For example, someone might feel hurt when their partner doesn't offer support during a tough time, assuming their distress should be obvious, even if it was never explicitly communicated. Emotional barriers are another key factor. Strong emotions like anger, fear, or sadness can cloud one's ability to express themselves clearly or listen empathetically. In heated arguments, for instance, individuals may focus more on defending their perspective than on understanding the other person's viewpoint. This often leads to escalation, where neither party feels heard and the original issue remains unresolved. Differences in communication styles can also contribute to breakdowns. Some people are more direct and expressive, while others may be more reserved or indirect. Without understanding these differences, a direct communicator might perceive their reserved partner as uninterested, while the reserved partner may feel overwhelmed or attacked. Cultural backgrounds, personal experiences, and upbringing further shape these styles, sometimes creating unintentional friction. Technology and distractions in modern life add another layer of complexity. Miscommunication is easily amplified through digital channels, where tone and context are often lost. For example, a short text message can be interpreted as dismissive or annoyed when it was meant to be neutral. Additionally, the constant presence of phones and devices can make it harder for partners to engage in meaningful face-to-face conversations, leading to feelings of neglect. Another common issue is the fear of vulnerability. People may withhold their true thoughts or feelings out of fear of being judged, rejected, or misunderstood. This avoidance can create a superficial dynamic where important issues are ignored and emotional needs remain unaddressed. Over time, this erodes trust and intimacy. Addressing communication breakdown requires intentional effort and a commitment to understanding. Active listening is crucial. This means fully focusing on the speaker, resisting the urge to interrupt, and reflecting back what you've heard to ensure clarity. For example, instead of responding defensively to a complaint, one might say, "It sounds like you felt hurt when I didn't acknowledge your efforts." Is that right? Expressing oneself clearly and calmly is equally important. Using I statements such as "I feel upset" when rather than "you never" helps prevent the other person from feeling blamed, making them more receptive to the message. Timing and tone also play a critical role. Addressing sensitive topics when both parties are calm and willing to engage can prevent unnecessary conflict. Building empathy and mutual respect is essential. Recognizing that the other person's perspective, even if different, is valid fosters a sense of connection and trust. Communication is not just about speaking and listening, but also about understanding and responding with care. By addressing these challenges and adopting healthier communication habits, couples and individuals can strengthen their relationships, navigate conflicts more effectively, and create a deeper sense of connection and mutual understanding. Societal expectations are unwritten rules and norms that shape how individuals are supposed to behave, particularly in relationships. These expectations are influenced by culture, tradition, media, and social institutions, and they often dictate roles, responsibilities, and acceptable expressions of emotions. In relationships, societal expectations can create pressure to conform to idealized standards, such as always being emotionally available, prioritizing career over personal needs, or adhering to traditional gender roles. For example, men may feel pressured to suppress vulnerability to appear strong, while women may face expectations to prioritize caregiving, even at the cost of their ambitions. These norms can lead to misunderstandings, unbalanced dynamics, and unfulfilled personal needs. Challenging societal expectations requires self-awareness and open communication. By acknowledging how these influences shape beliefs and behaviors, individuals and couples can redefine their roles and values in a way that aligns with their authentic selves, fostering healthier, more equitable relationships. Balancing personal growth and relationship needs is a delicate and essential aspect of healthy connections. Personal growth involves pursuing self-improvement, goals, and individuality, while relationships often require compromise, shared priorities, and mutual support. The challenge arises when these pursuits seem to conflict. For example, dedicating time to career development might reduce time for a partner, or focusing on self-discovery might feel at odds with maintaining closeness. This tension is not inherently negative. It reflects the dynamic interplay between autonomy and intimacy. Healthy relationships allow space for both partners to grow as individuals while supporting each other's journeys. Open communication, mutual respect, and clear boundaries are key to finding harmony. By fostering a relationship that encourages growth and collaboration, both partners can thrive individually and together, creating a deeper, more fulfilling connection. The path to resolution in relationships involves addressing conflicts constructively and finding mutually agreeable solutions. It requires clear communication, where both parties express their feelings, needs, and concerns openly while actively listening to each other. Key to this process is emotional regulation, staying calm and focused during disagreements to avoid escalation. Resolution also demands empathy and compromise. Understanding each other's perspectives helps create a space for cooperation, where both individuals are willing to adjust their expectations or behaviors. Setting clear boundaries and agreeing on actions to prevent future issues can strengthen the relationship. Finally, the path to resolution often involves personal reflection and growth. Recognizing one's own role in the conflict and being willing to change or adapt fosters a sense of accountability. By prioritizing the health of the relationship and working together, both partners can move forward with a deeper connection and greater understanding.